And welcome back. Moments ago, we talked about Jeb Bush's challenging week. Joining me now is one of his chief rivals for the Republican presidential nomination, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who, by the way, has a brand new book coming out, Taking a Stand, Moving Beyond Partisan Politics to Unite America. It'll be released in just over a week. We got an exclusive first look at it, and we'll be talking with the senator about it. Welcome back to Meet the Press, Senator Paul.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
Let me start with the issue that got brought up by Governor, essentially by some, with Governor Bush this week, and it's the war in Iraq. Are you satisfied after Governor Bush's sort of fourth answer on this, saying that he wouldn't have gone into the war in Iraq, knowing what we know now? Are you satisfied now that Governor Bush won't be taking us back to the Bush foreign policy? You had said that that was an important litmus test for him.
Well, I think it's an important question, and I don't think it's a historical anecdote. I don't think it's something that's a hypothetical question. I think it's a recurring question in the Middle East. Is it a good idea to topple secular dictators, and what happens when we do? I think when Hussein was toppled, we got chaos. We still have chaos in Iraq. I think it emboldened Iran. I think we now have the rise of radical Islam in Iraq as well. But I think the same question, to be fair, ought to be asked of Hillary Clinton if she ever takes questions. They should ask her, was it a good idea to invade Libya? Did that make us less safe? Did it make it more chaotic? Did it allow radical Islam and ISIS to grow stronger? So I think the war in Iraq is a good question and still a current question, but so is the question of should we have gone into Libya?
You know, Senator Marco Rubio, in being asked the same question about Iraq, gave this answer. He says, presidents don't have the benefit of hindsight, and the fact of the matter is the world is a better place because Saddam Hussein is not around. You're sort of implying that you disagree with that. Do you believe the world would be a better place if Saddam Hussein were still the strong man in Iraq?
I don't think that's exactly how I'd put it, but I would say that I think that we are more at risk for attack from people who are training, organizing, and fighting in Iraq than we were before. So, for example, ISIS is more of an aberration than even Hussein was. So you have this radical brand of jihad, this radical brand of Islam that is now strong and growing stronger because of sort of the failed state that Iraq is. You have the same thing going on in Libya. So this is a valid debate, and we're going to have this debate not only in the Republican primary but in the general as to whether or not it's a good idea. Is intervention always a good idea, or sometimes does it lead to unintended consequences? You
know, you laid out in your book very clearly your foreign policy, basically a peace through strength foreign policy, essentially saying, you know what, intervention, and making a strong case against intervention, that intervention over the years has only served to create more problems than it was designed to stop. But I guess let me ask you this. Would you consider going after a country that was trying to put together a nuclear weapons program, right? That was the reason to go in Iraq as far as George W. Bush was concerned. And that is a reason some people say we might have to have that military option on the table with Iran. Is that a viable reason to go to war, to prevent another country from starting a nuclear weapons program?
I think that we always have to have the threat of military force behind diplomacy. But I would prefer diplomacy. I think we can still have negotiations. And the thing is that we negotiated with the Soviets for 70 years, and we ended up coming to a peaceful outcome. I think with Iran, we need to be steady and firm that they cannot have a nuclear weapons program. There has to be the threat of military force. But my hope is really that negotiations continue. There are some in my party who say, oh, I don't want any negotiations. They're ready to be done with it. Right. But once you're done with negotiations, the choices are war or they get a weapon. And I don't want to have just those two binary choices.
You know, you also imply in your book, I thought it was a fascinating quote, and you were connecting Libya and Iran. And you say this: the problem is we've already sent the wrong message. The last time a leader gave up his desire for weapons of mass destruction, we bombed his country and took him out. You're referring to Gaddafi, who gave up nuclear ambitions, and then 2 years later, in a different administration, the Obama administration, they ended up taking him out. You're implying that the Iranians shouldn't trust the United States in these negotiations, are you not?
I think it's more a criticism of Hillary Clinton, because I think she should have thought through the repercussions of the invasion and toppling of Gaddafi. Because Hillary Clinton made the decision to do this with President Obama's assent what you end up having is that now it does send a signal to Iran, and it makes them question whether or not we will honestly be a good broker or a good negotiator with eliminating of nuclear weapons, because Gaddafi did give up his nuclear ambition and was toppled anyway. So it's an argument for not doing what we did in Libya.
Let me move to the Patriot Act. We have reauthorizations coming up before June 1st. It's unclear whether it's going to get reauthorized at all before you guys go on your Memorial Day recess. Senator McConnell's talking about a 2-month extension. I know you want to filibuster any Patriot Act extension. Would you even support a 2-month extension?
Well, the court has ruled that the bulk of all of our phone records all of the time is illegal, so really it ought to stop. If the president's obeying the law, he should stop it immediately, and we shouldn't be doing this. I don't want to replace it with another system. I really think that we could get along with the Constitution just fine. We did for over 200 years. You can catch terrorists. Judges will grant warrants. In fact, if you look at the history of our country, judges are actually very much, it's not a difficult lift to get a warrant for most activities that you want to be investigated. But the warrant should have someone's name on it. Shouldn't say Verizon, and then we shouldn't collect all of the customers of Verizon. That's a general warrant, and that's one of the things we fought the Revolutionary War over, is that we wanted individualized warrants.
You know, you're so critical of the NSA in your book. I have to ask, would you eliminate it if you were president?
No, I would actually keep the NSA. In fact, I would have the NSA target their activities more and more towards our enemies. I think if you're not spending so much time and money collecting the information of innocent Americans, maybe we could have spent more time knowing that one of the Tsarnaev boys, one of the Boston bombers, had gone back to Chechnya. We didn't know that, even though we've been tipped off by the Russians. We had communicated, we had interviewed him, and still didn't know that. Same with the recent jihadist from Phoenix that traveled to Texas in the shooting in Garland. We knew him. We had investigated him. We had put him in jail. I want to spend more time on people we have suspicion of and we have probable cause of, and less time on innocent Americans. It distracts us from the job of getting terrorists.
All right, let me go with one last question here, and it's an idea that's in your book, perhaps the most intriguing idea I found reading your book, and that is this. If you say if you find the best teachers on a subject, perhaps in the country, that the idea is we shouldn't have smaller classrooms. We should have a classroom perhaps of 1 million students, meaning the best calculus teacher ought to teach calculus to anybody who wants to learn calculus in America, and then the teacher on the ground implements the curriculum. It's an intriguing idea, but 2 pages later you say there shouldn't be a national curriculum. How is that not in contradiction with being against Common Core, but for like nationalized teaching like what you described?
What I'm talking about is something truly extraordinary. One of the big leaps forward for America was when we started becoming a meritocracy and everybody was open for education. There's still some people in America, but particularly in other countries, that are trapped in poverty and don't have access. When the internet expands this access and someone in the recesses of the jungle can learn from the best calculus teacher on the planet, we're going to discover genius that's going to allow progress and mankind to improve. And I think it's going to be a huge leap for technological progress. But it's by having larger classrooms. It's counterintuitive, not smaller. And they will be virtual classrooms, and they will be extraordinarily cheap. But I'm not saying this comes from government. I think this comes really more than likely from the innovators that you meet in Silicon Valley or the innovators you meet in Austin, Texas. I think that's where it's going to come from, not from government.
But it's not going to be local control.
Well, I'm not advocating against something that is transmitted even worldwide or international. I'm not arguing against any kind of national communication or even national testing. I took national tests when I was a kid. What I'm arguing is against centralized control in the body of one government. I'm arguing for something where someone in Madagascar who's a genius, who's in the street living in poverty, and we never discover that genius, is going to be connected to someone at Harvard or MIT or Baylor or some great university, and they're all of a sudden going to have that knowledge awaken something in their mind that we haven't seen before. That's the real beauty of the internet. We aren't quite there yet, but people have misconstrued that intelligence is going to come from smartphones. It's going to come from connecting intelligent people to intelligent people and great teachers to the masses. But I think there's extraordinary